In this video, I'm going to look at a completed book page I've created for one of my courses and look at some of the interesting things that I've been able to do with groups mainly and some work on timers and object visibility. So I've got a book page here that I want to show. This is created for training for WalkMe, and I've created it in SAP Enable Now, obviously, as all of my training is. And I'm showing the learner how to create a smart tips set. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. If you're never going to use WalkMe, don't worry about that either. I just want to show you some interesting techniques in SAP Enable Now. WalkMe don't really care about that at the moment. So I've got this book page here. It's in the middle of a book. I've opened it and I've paused it because it's going to start audio straight away. I'm going to play through most of it. I'll pause it and comment on a couple of things as we're going. This is exactly how it looks to the user. This is absolutely playing out the published version of this particular book page. Okay, so I'm going to run through this. I've got a graphic on the start here. It doesn't really matter what it is. I'm holding up the smart tip icon that WalkMe uses, but I don't really start animating anything on the screen until about 9 seconds in. And the audio's running during those 9 seconds. I don't want the learner just staring at a blank screen listening to the audio. So I wanted something on there before we actually start with the true content. So let me run through this and I'll pause it a couple of times and explain what's going on. This slide walks you through the steps you need to carry out in order to create a new smart tips set. To start, so you can see here already I've got a progress bar going across the bottom as I do with all of my training slides. I've actually got 7 steps in here, as we'll see in a minute, and I've got the initial page audio. So I've split this bar up into eighths and it progresses 1/8 for each step down here. We've already got through the first eighth on basically the initial introduction, and then you'll see that this will progress through for each step all the way through there. Now as we look at this, let me play a bit further. Make sure the editor panel's open and then click on the Create button to display the list of available object types. So I display a step which has a step number, and it's got this bar on here because I've got a lot of information that's layered on top of each other. I can't display it all at once. So I display the text for each step individually. So I have the step number, I have this bar here just to show which step it's connected to. This will make more sense in a minute. I've got text explaining what's done, and then I've got a screenshot in here. So I've basically got 4 different things going on for a particular step. And I've got the audio going, and at the end of each audio segment, I then show this next button that the user or the learner has to click on to go to the next step. So I click on that now. Select Smart Tips Set from the pop-up menu. And you can see that the way this works now is each time it goes to a step, it shows you what step you're on. But I leave the steps that we've been on already still there, still visible, but kind of like low lighted, and the current step is highlighted in the same color that we're using for this bar. And we'll see why that's important later, as opposed to just having the step number in the same place and the text always in the same place. But you can see here I've got a new screenshot, new text, new highlighted step number. And again, at the end of the audio, I display the next button. I always want them to have to listen to the entire audio before they can click next. So I'll go through a couple more steps on here. Click next. Enter a name for the new Smart Tips set and click continue when prompted. As a quick tip, for S/4HANA, consider including the app name or screen ID in the set name. For other websites, include the page name or screen title. So while we're here, we're at the end of step 3. Remember I said that the progress bar was split into 8 segments, 1 for the initial intro and then 1 per step. We've been through 3 steps plus the intro is 4 out of the 8, which is why the progress bar is now half the way across here. And the distance it travels, the time it takes to travel that same distance varies depending on how long the audio is. That's relatively easy to set up. But let's go on to the next step because this starts to introduce some more useful things. It's a slightly longer step there's more instructions, there's more audio, and there's more things that are happening on the screen as well. So let's check out step 4. Once you've entered a name and clicked Continue, the full editor panel slides out to the right. Here you can specify a display condition, that is, the specific conditions under which the contents of this Smart Tips set should be displayed, and or segmentation, that is, the users for which the content will be displayed. Most of the time you'll want this help content to only appear on a specific application page. So note here that I'm now getting additional information displayed on top of this screenshot within just this step. And I've got that obviously timed with the audio as well. So it displays this bubble when the audio gets to the point where it's explaining that bubble. Let me continue. Page. So you'd select Display Only on Specific Page and then click on Create Rules to define the condition. We'll do this in step 5. The alternative is to select Display on Multiple Pages, and the Smart Tips in this set will be displayed for all pages within the application. This is only really suitable for elements that appear on every page, for example in a standard footer or header, so you won't use this option as often. The segmentation list will be empty when you first create a Smart Tips set, and you can't actually assign segments from here. Instead, once you've saved the Smart Tips set, you can return to the main editor panel and assign segments from there. If you come back to this screen after doing that, for example to edit the set or add new Smart Tips to it, you'll see those assigned segments listed here. Okay, so that was step 4. There's 3 bubbles of information that are displayed at different times during that step. So it's not just a straight, okay, here's step 4, here's all of the information. Again, I've still got a highlighted step number, this bar down here, the little connector in there, a column of text, a screenshot, and then on top of that, I've got another 3 bubbles of information. Now, this carries on through the rest of the steps. I'm going to go through those, but I'll speed up the video just to skip through them because it's not really the interesting part of what I'm trying to show you here. So I'm going to quickly run through all the way through to step 7. So okay, let's pick it up from here again. So we're into step 7. This is the last of my 7 steps. Again, there's the usual highlighted step number, the text, the bars, the screenshot, and then some bubbles on top of that with additional information. And it's still playing the audio. Note what happens when we get to the end of the audio for step 7. There's obviously not going to be a next button because we've reached the end. There is no next step. But let's see what else happens here. Finished with this Smart Tips set for now, you can just click on the back button and return to the editor homepage, or whichever folder below this you created the set in. On the next slide, we'll look at creating Smart Tips within this set. Okay, so this is basically the end of those steps. It was a lot of information. It's probably at least 5 or 6 minutes of going through that. So we've got a lot of information on this screen, a lot of audio, and I don't know that the user or the learner will actually remember all of this. So this is where this book page got super complicated, because what I wanted them to be able to do is go back and visit any of those steps for a refresher on what was done. Or what was said the first time around. If there was anything they didn't catch, I want them to be able to say, oh, what was this step again? And quickly run through the steps on their own when they wanted to get that additional information. So from here, I've got a little instruction here for a refresher on any step. Click on the step number. And you'll notice all of the steps are low lighted and they're all active areas. I can go and click on them. So when I go and click on one of these, and I'll go back to step 4 again. So I'll click on step 4. Once you've entered a name and clicked continue, the full editor. So what I've done here is you can go to any step and redisplay the information for that, but it displays all of the help bubbles on top of the screen immediately. Instead of it being tied to the audio, in case all you really wanted was a quick refresher. Oh, what was that field again? Let me go and check that. You don't want to have to sit through 5 minutes of audio again just to wait for that bubble to pop up. So I've deliberately set this up so that it gives them all of those bubbles instantly on the screen. And this is a technique I like to do a lot with my training, is when I've introduced a bunch of different elements on the screen and I've got different pop-ups on it, I like to leave them seeing all of that stuff at the end of the screen, or as much as I can get on the screen, so they can look at it and get a refresher and read it again at their leisure if they need to before going on. So that's what I've done here. I've still got the audio displaying or audio playing if I play that.
Slides out to the right. Here you
so
can
you can
specify
see that the audio is
condition,
still playing.
That is the specific conditions under
here,
which the contents of this smart tip set should be displayed.
So I've paused the audio. Notice that the progress bar is all the way to the end already. We've seen everything. Previously, when you started a step, it started showing that progress bar. But obviously, once we've been through all of the steps, I don't want the progress bar going back to halfway through the slide and progressing again once they're on step 4, because they've already seen everything and they might jump around these steps in a particular order. So if I don't need to do that here. But remember that previously, let me see if the audio is still playing. I think it's stopped now. Yep, the audio's stopped now. Now, previously, it would show me that next button, okay? But here, I obviously don't want to show the next button because we've already been to the next step and the next step and the next step. And I just want them to be able to jump around wherever they want in whatever order. So here, I can go back and look at step 2 if I want to. Oh, sorry, I need to play. So I can go back to step 2. I can jump to step 5. I can go through these in any order. The audio is playing.
Be displayed where you can
I just switched it off so I wasn't talking over myself. But I can go through these steps in any order. But I don't want that next button to ever be displayed. And again, I do want it to show all of the bubbles on the screen all at the same time. So that's how this book page works. It introduces everything step by step, screen by screen, and then gives them the opportunity to go back and revisit any of those. And that did get fairly complicated. So now, on the second half of this video, I'm going to go and look at what I did to set that up in Producer and how it's all set up in the editor. Because it's there's a couple of interesting techniques in here. So let me jump to Producer. You can already see that I've got a lot going on here. Everything's visible on the screen. A lot of things are initially hidden. And then I've got 8 lots of audio for my 7 steps and my introduction. I've got 8 timers in here for the initial one, and then I've got a timer per step. And the reason why I need a timer, if I go to step 4, let's see, 1, 2, 3, step 4 timer, if I go and look at that, that's because I want to display my content for step 4. That's my image, my instructions, and the step number. And then I've got these bubbles that I'm introducing that are timed to work with that audio as well. Okay? And then I've got a couple of other things showing where they're clicking and stuff like that. So I've got a bunch of different things happening here. So each step, as soon as you click to display that step, it's going to kick off this timer, and that timer is going to introduce that content and then introduce those bubbles. Only the first time you go through those slides. After that, I always want the bubbles to be displayed. So how do I work around that? How do I know whether it's the first time they're displaying step 4 and we need to introduce the bubbles in time with the audio, or it's basically they've been to the end and they're coming back and they're clicking step 4 for a refresher, and then I want to just show them all the bubbles all at once. So let's look at how we do that. First of all, how do I trigger this timer for step 4? That was fairly simple to do. All I did is I've got a next button, and however many times they click on next, it's going to do something. So remember, we display step 1, then display the next button. So if they click on the next button, then it's going to be the first click on it, which is going to show step 2 stuff. Second time they click on it, because it's moved down, it's the same button. I literally use exactly the same single button and move it using a an animation control to move it to below the next step. So I do that, and the second time they click on it, it's going to show them step 3, and so on all the way down here to show those things. So we do that. Now, the interesting stuff is what gets displayed for the steps. First of all, remember I said that every step effectively has the step number, the bar, the text, and then a screenshot. So if I go and look at those, and I'll start with step 4, I've got, in fact, let me look at all of the steps. I've got them set up in groups. So step 1, I have the image for that, the screenshot. This is a screenshot for step 1. And then I've got my text in here, which is this text that says, in the editor panel, click on the create button. And then I've got my highlighted step number, which is there. And then I've got my little connection as well, which is a little bar across there. If you're wondering where the big vertical bar comes from along the side of the text, that was basically set up by having a border only on the left-hand side of the text box with a width of 4. So it looks like it's a horizontal rule. It's actually a border on the text box because it gives me one less thing to worry about. But anyway, the key thing here is that I've got everything that I want to be displayed for step 1 in a group. Everything that's displayed for step 2 is in a group. For 3 is in a group, etc., etc. And then what I do is I have an object visibility control, which means the object visibility controls, if you're not familiar with those, they say only display one of these objects at a time. And here, obviously, I only want to have the step 1 information displayed, or the step 2 information, or the step 3 information, and so on and so on. I never want to display more than one step at a time. So this is an interesting thing you can do with groups. Although object visibility, you think, well, we're just swapping out images or whatever. No, you can actually swap out entire groups that, in my case, those groups contain, they contain a shape, a screenshot, a text box, a connection, and for some of these, a bubble and maybe some other images as well. All of those things are contained in the group, and then I'm basically swapping out which group I'm displaying. So if I go and look at the timer again for step 1, 2, 3, 4, the timer here, it's using that object visibility control, which is I've called display content. That's what this one's called, display content. And it says, okay, go and activate group 4. And if I go and look at what group 4 is, that is my display step 4 group. And if I go and look at what's in my step 4 group, I've got in here, note initially it's hidden. They're all hidden. And then the object visibility control chooses which one to display. And within that, though, this is the clever part. I have my screenshot, I have my text, my little connector, and my highlighted number. They're all visible immediately. Then these other things that I'm introducing, which is usually my bubbles within this group, they're hidden, which means when my object visibility control says display step 4, it will display only these things. It basically sets the group to visible, but within the group, only these elements are visible within the group. That's the text, the screenshot, the connection, and the highlighted step number. The bubbles are invisible. They're hidden, okay? Which means that even though you display the group, when you set the group to display, it's only going to allow you to see the objects within the group that are displayed. And then the other objects that are currently hidden within that group, it's not going to show you those. Because, again, these bubbles I want to introduce one at a time in concert with the audio. So if I go back to my step 4 timer here, I can see that when I display my step 4 content, it will display the screenshot and the text, etc. But it doesn't display the bubbles because I introduce the bubbles after 21 seconds. I introduce the first bubble. After 36 seconds, I introduce the next bubble. So that's how we can use groups and show a group versus show the content within that group or content objects within that group. You can control both of those things. And that works very well for this because, again, remember that when we get to the end and we've seen all of the steps, we want them to be able to click on a step number and see the step number, the text, the screenshot, and all of the bubbles at the same time. Once they've already seen them and they've been introduced in the audio, they are displayed because, again, in this step here, we're saying display this bubble within the group. The group is visible, so we're going to display this bubble now as well as whatever else in step 4 is automatically visible. And that means that when we reach the end of the audio for step 4, we have now displayed all of these objects. Okay, all of these bubbles are now displayed, which means that when I trigger the redisplay of step 4 by allowing them to click on any of the low lighted steps, and if I go and find one of those, say step 4 low lighted, what this says is when they click on it, start the timer for step 4. The timer for step 4 says display content activate 04, which again is the content for step 4. And at that point, all of these will have been displayed already, which means that as soon as you just display the step 4 group, it's now going to include all of those as well. Okay, so that's how that works, of being able to show them all of the bubbles all at the same time immediately as soon as they're seeing that screenshot, just to speed things up on the refresh. So again, very interesting use of showing and hiding objects within a group and the group itself. Last thing I'll point out is that, remember, we've got our next button, and that next button we only want to display when they're doing their initial run through the steps. But the way all of these are set up is that I've got it so that it's always, where is it in here where I'm doing the clicks on next. It's always going to move this next button and it's always going to display it, which isn't really what I want at this point. So I basically cheated here, and what I did was I've created the next button, which is initially hidden, and then I show it and move through the steps and move it, but I've got that within its own group. It's the only object in that group. Now, SAP Enable Now will not let you create a group with only one object in it, but it will let you have a group with only one object in it. So what I did was I just put any old shape on the book page, grouped that shape along with the next button into a group, called it next button group, then deleted that shape altogether from the book page, which left only the one object in the next button group. So you can absolutely have just one object in a group. Now, why did I do that? Because when I've reached the end of step 7, I can hide this group, and then it doesn't matter if all of the other steps and all of the other clicks are trying to show the next button, because the group itself is hidden at that point. And you can show and hide an object within a group as much as you like. If the group itself is not visible, setting the object within it to visible to show it isn't going to make any difference whatsoever. It's still not going to show it. So that's where I get into the very final thing I promise on this, which is when we reach the end of step 7, I want to do things like hide this entire next button group. I want to show those instructions that say click on any step you like for a refresher, and do a couple of other things as well. And so what I do there is, again, I'm kind of cheating with functionality here. I have another time control. This is only ever triggered when we complete step 7 for the first time. And you can see that I do a bunch of things like hiding the next button, hiding some, I've got a control that, or actually a shape that prevents them from being able to click on any of the low lighted buttons until we've got to the end. I actually just use a shape that covers those low lighted buttons, is invisible, but prevents people from clicking on them, because I don't want someone to be getting as far as step 3 on their initial run through and then trying to click on step 1 because they've been here before and they kind of know how it works. So I block them from doing that until they've been through everything. So there's a few things I do in here. There's 6 or 7 actions I want to perform once we get to the end of step 7 for the first time. Okay, so rather than put all of these in somewhere else, I've kind of created like a little subroutine that says, okay, all of these things we're only going to do this one time. Okay, so I only ever have a count of 1 here. And the first time we complete step 7, I think I've probably got it in here, timer for step 7, maybe down at the end of it or somewhere. I can't remember where I've got it. Maybe it's at the end of the audio for step 7. Let me go and check that. Audio for step 7. Yeah, first time completion of step 7. So when we finish step 7 for the first time, I count up this timer. That's the only time I ever count it up. It's never going to go higher than a count of 1. But basically what I'm saying is, okay, we've reached the end of step 7 for the first time. Go and do these things. And those things are all just in here on a count of 1. It's a very nice way of having, as I say, like a subroutine. And I use this technique quite often if I've got a repetitive set of actions that I need to perform to reset the screen or to do something else. I'll go and put them all in a subroutine and just a counter control with only 1 count in it, and then just trigger that whenever I need to. So another useful technique there. Or you can do the same thing with the time control. I could have absolutely used another time control on this and trigger that time control, and that time control only ever has a time of 00 and the count in there as well. So that's another technique. Anyway, that was what I wanted to show you on this book page. There is a lot going on. You can see that there's a whole bunch of controls in here. This does, again, emphasize the need to give meaningful names to everything. You can't just have bubble 1, bubble 2, bubble 3 all the way down there. They need to be have a useful name so you can figure out what you're doing. Same with your steps, your groups. I always put the name group on the end of it so it's easier to see when I'm trying to figure out those controls in an action element. Always give useful names for everything. Always try and keep things organized. I've got step 1, step 2 above it, step 3 above it, all the way up there to try and keep things organized. I have my timers, my audio, and my animation controls all at the end, so they're in the background and out of the way and they don't get in the way of anything else I'm clicking on the screen. But anyway, all of this just to say that this has been some useful stuff that you can do with groups and the objects within the groups, some other stuff on timers in here as well, just to show you how this particular book page was built out. Hope you find that useful. I hope you find that these are techniques that you can go and use in your own book pages. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, please subscribe.